Are we live? All right. This is so exciting. I am so happy to be here. Thank you all for joining us on Zoom, and thank you to those of us that are here in the room with us. It's our first time to try this brown bag hybrid. So before we've done it in person, and then we've been doing it on Zoom, and this is our first time hybrid. I'm Christina Littlejohn, Executive Director of the Symphony, and I am so excited to welcome with us today our guest conductor, Akiko Fujimoto.
Hi, Christina. Hi, everyone.
Hi. So I thought we would just get started by just asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I'm Akiko. I am the guest conductor for this week, and I'm currently the music director of the Mid-Texas Symphony, which is an orchestra in between San Antonio and Austin, Texas. And previously, I was the associate conductor of the Minnesota Orchestra, most recently anyway. Currently, I live in Conway, Arkansas, so I'm a neighbor. I moved there during the early part of the pandemic, so it's very nice to make music with the ASO, whom I've watched over the years here and there, but it's great to finally make music with them, so it's a great honor to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know that recently you were conducting San Francisco Symphony too.
Yes.
How was that?
It was great. So it's actually, because of a sad situation, conductor Michael Morgan passed away this past late summer. And he was slated to guest conduct the San Francisco Symphony on a program in February this year. And instead of replacing him with another guest conductor, they decided to get three of us kind of emerging conductors who are somewhat affiliated with the San Francisco Symphony already or about to be, to split the concert in thirds. So I was tasked with conducting Florence Price's Symphony No. 3, and the other two conductors did the rest of the program, which was a very eclectic program, very Brahms, Price, Carlos Simon. It was a very eclectic program, so it kind of worked out to split it three ways, and it was a great experience.
Oh, wow. Well, and I had forgotten that you were conducting Florence Price. As you know, Florence Price is part of our history, and we're embracing Florence Price. Just released people were listening to our Florence Price recording that we just is on Spotify now.
Great.
Yes,
I'll
with
check it
Cameron
out.
Rowland. Yes.
Yes.
And it's also Florence Price Week. On Saturday is Florence Price Day for Little Rock, Arkansas, because it's a celebration of her birthday.
That's great.
Yeah. And I know this program, we don't have Florence Price on this program, but we do have a piece by a living composer, Tawny Leon, and it's part of our Amplifying Voices grant. I'm so excited. It's through New Music USA, and we commissioned Tanya, but they asked orchestras to commission 7 different voices that needed to be amplified. We're actually launching this. We're the first one of all the orchestras.
Right.
This weekend you get the very first one in the whole country that is part of this program.
Yes.
What's it like to conduct a work by a living composer, but also a world premiere? It's got some different challenges, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a great honor. I mean, I'm just thrilled that we get to do this piece. Tanya Leon, I had never done any of her music before personally, but always admire her from afar. I mean, she's a living legend, really. I'm so glad that Christina and the ASO invited her to do this, and they invited me to take part in this world premiere. It's very exciting. So as soon as I got the score, I spent the first 48 hours just combing through the score. And then I made a list of questions for her. And then thankfully Christina had already put us in touch, at the beginning of this commission process. So I had her number already, an email address, and I was going to reach out to her, but she beat me to it. She called me. I remember it was a Sunday afternoon after I received the score, and just called me to kind of touch base. I was like, perfect. I got some questions for you. So we just went boom, boom, boom. We went through my list of questions, got them all answered. And then I started, studying in earnest. Like, now that these kind of surface level questions, kind of cosmetic things were answered, technical things were answered, I started to study in earnest. And it's not easy. Her music is very complex in the sense that her notation is so precise, and her compositional craft is very apparent. I mean, she's a master, craftswoman, and you can see that on the page. It's just the way she notates things. It's very precise, and she expects a lot out of the musicians. I think it's actually very easy to conduct. I just have to like beat 3 beats or 4 beats per measure very slowly most of the time, and it's super simple to conduct. The musicians have to do all the work within that slow moving time frame. So I basically, once I familiarize myself with the kind of the surface level stuff, I just kind of started to strategize like, how will we rehearse this and put it together in the given amount of time, because I also have 2 other pieces to knock out. So I just thought, and we already, I kind of guesstimated what it was going to take. It's a 12-minute piece, so it's the shortest piece on the program, but with a world premiere, a piece that there's no record of having been done, it's going to take at least twice as long as you normally would give any piece of music, and probably you could even give it 10 times more time. Just kind of exploring it and familiarizing ourselves. And we did receive like a MIDI recording of it, but of course that doesn't do it justice to the reality of the piece. So I just spent the kind of last 2 weeks or so just strategizing, like, okay, if this is like this one part is a challenge for me, I'm sure it would be a challenge for some of the musicians, if not all. So how would I bring 70, 80 people together to execute this difficult passage? Stuff like that. That's what I spent doing. And then, your librarian, Geronimo, was super helpful. He also discovered some questions, and I discovered some more questions along the way. So we kind of made another list and then asked Tanya about it, and then she was kind enough to respond. So we had a lot of the basic obvious things answered. But the best thing is that we rehearsed once without her on Tuesday night already, and then tonight she is attending the rehearsal. So we actually get to have her listen. My plan is to have her listen to run through, and then just have her give us comments. And she understands these processes. She's done so many premieres, I'm sure, so she knows it's a little rough at the beginning, and she knows what some of the technical challenges might be. But she's also, a very experienced conductor herself, so she knows how ensembles work to put a piece together. So it's going to be super exciting to have her on board starting tonight and through the whole process, and also be there at the premiere. I mean, Saturday and Sunday. So it just couldn't be more exciting.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I was just thinking about, it's fun for me to have living composers, because I've been in sessions before, and I was a violin solo, and so then she was able to collaborate with the composer and say, I think it really needs to go this way, and he was like, no, I think you've got a good point. Like the idea of being able to collaborate as opposed to just look and go, I wonder what Beethoven really meant here. Well, I can't actually ask Beethoven, but with Tanya here, there might be more room for some collaboration.
Exactly. And I'm prepared for her to change things on the fly once she hears something. Actually, in fact, there's already a passage that worth considering repeating if it feels like good to do that. And I told her, why don't you listen to a run through first without the repeat, and then if you want us to repeat, we'll add the repeat in. So stuff like that is a lot of fun. And also, as you mentioned, we can't ask Beethoven or Strauss or Mozart what they were thinking. I think all we do as musicians is like study the score, practice it to the best of our knowledge, and just imagine what the composer meant based on like the notation. And with kind of deceased composers that are famous, there's a lot of literature and research about performance practice, so that's helpful. But you still have to make up your own mind, like based on our current situation. We have this orchestra and this conductor and this hall and this kind of a series. It's a big calculation, and so contextualizing all that, what would be the best way to execute these dots on the page. And at the end of the day, they are dots on the page. So it's really helpful to have a living composer come and kind of breathe like context into that, so that we really know, like, instead of just staring at a piece of paper, to have her. I mean, she is the score. She's the living, breathing score. It's just the composers don't get to talk while we perform their pieces. So, it's just going to be really nice it's going to like reassure us that we're on the right path. because since there's no books written about this piece. I did read her biography, Stride, of Tanya Leon, earlier this season, just to kind of prepare for meeting her. So I have some ideas about the background, but the book is more about her upbringing and not so much about music. There's some musical analysis, but it's mostly about her life. So it's just, and sometimes our lives have nothing to do with the music. I mean, you can't really say, oh, because she is like this, her music sounds like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Sometimes there's no direct correlation, although there are cultural things we bring to composition. So yeah, it's just gonna be nice to have her there.
Yeah. Oh, great. Think about it. I have two different directions, so I'll go in this one first. So Tanya came to the United States from Cuba, and then Martina was Croatian, and she's immigrated as well. And then you moved here to the States when you were 14 from Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about how that influenced you in your life. Could you talk a little more about that?
Sure. So I think the good thing about, I didn't move to the States voluntarily. It was because of my dad's job transfer. And I came begrudgingly, but the joke in the family is that I'm the only one that's still here. And everybody else has gone back to Japan. So obviously I've assimilated well, and I enjoy living in this country. But I think by the time you're 14, you're kind of formed as a person. Mm-hmm. So I think there's still many things about me that are so like Japanese, that surprise people, because people, don't hear much of an accent, or I seem kind of colloquial to people, or, I went to basically starting high school, I was immersed in California first and then various different states. So I seem kind of Americanized, but there are many things about me that are still oddly Japanese, I think, that come out at weird instances, at work or interpersonal things. So that's kind of funny. I think the one good thing about having moved at kind of a age where you were kind of basically formed as a person is that you are bicultural, pretty clearly bicultural. It's not, if I had come here earlier, I think maybe the Japanese part would have been a little bit less. Right. But I think I'm pretty bicultural, and it's good because you learn to look at things from at least two different perspectives. And one of the things I really appreciate about this country is that it's a country of mostly immigrants, for generations, or it could be first generation or multiple generations. And there are very few of us that are actually from this place. And I think that kind of lends itself to, obviously having so many opinions and viewpoints and just appearances and, ideas. And it's kind of assumed that you're not really from here. And that was very freeing for me, coming from a very mostly homogenous country. Although Japan also has indigenous people that were dominated and overlooked by the mainstream, the Japanese race. But it's basically a homogenous monocultural country. So it's just very freeing to be in this country where at least there are two different viewpoints, if not more, an infinite number. And I think, I resonate with that part of Tanya's background, being a Cuban American. And of course, Martina, whom I know many of you have heard her already with the ASO. And I worked with her before as well, but she's from Croatia. I think she might live in Germany right now, but she won the Cleveland competition earlier, so she's very well versed in American culture as well. And in fact, the one time we did work together was in Texas, so she's very multicultural as well, and multilingual, kind of world traveler. So I think, it's kind of funny. All three of us are at least bicultural, if not more. In Martina's case, and Tanya is kind of a world citizen, mm-hmm. In the musical sense. I mean, she was just saying the other day that she's going to, I don't know if she's going, but in Germany, Ensemble Modern in Frankfurt is doing a concert of all her music. Oh. Yeah, and she's, looking forward to that. And the way they make music in Germany and the way they deal with things, is different from the way we do things here too. So it's refreshing for her as well. And, she's a world worldwide musician. So, she's very worldly as well. In some ways, I feel like I'm the least diverse because I've just kind of stuck to this continent for the last, 30 plus years of my life. But it's great to have multiple perspectives. And American music is at least bicultural, if not more. Copeland, Gershwin, Bernstein, even those famous guys that we love and know very well, they're bicultural musically too, because they all started in the European tradition and so successfully, incorporated the American tradition. So, yeah, it's convenient. It's very good to be bicultural in music.
Are there any, when I think about different times in my life where there was a path I could have chosen, but I went this way instead, or I look back and go, gosh, that person put me, this person put me here, and that's why I'm here. In your role as a conductor or your musical journey, are there moments that you're like, oh, this is definitely when I'm going to become a conductor, or?
Yes. So I, realized this is what I wanted to do about my junior year of college. But before that, my high school choir director was, when I was in high school, she was getting her master's degree at the same time as teaching full time. So she would miss a lot of days. And so she would hire a substitute teacher, but then she would have me rehearse the choir. I didn't know I was being used for free labor, but, but I was sometimes rehearsing the choir, and then she was like, maybe you're going to be a conductor or something. And I said, no. And then, I'm going to go to a normal. I had no concept of being a professional musician. I'm the black sheep in my family. I have no professional musicians around me. I was just doing music at school because I loved it, like band and choir and taking private lessons on the trombone and stuff. So I just had no concept of a career in music at that point. And I wasn't good enough on any one instrument to try out for Juilliard or Curtis,
Right.
music conservatories. I wasn't gunning for that. So it was definitely an avocation at the time, but just a very big passion for me. And then, so she basically planted the seed, first, and I just resisted it. And then once I got to college, I was majoring in psychology, but I was covertly taking all the music classes on the side and also participating in ensembles, taking lessons, because I still wanted to do that. And then I ran into my mentor who taught this intro to conducting class, which I had to take because I had done something in high school and I was curious. And then he was like, and then he kind of planted another seed, and then he gave me some opportunities to actually do it after the class wrapped up. And then so that kind of set things on fire, and then the rest, I've never looked back since then. Then I officially became, I came out as a music major after that. I was kind of a closeted music major at the time, but I was kind of done with the psych major anyway. I think I just didn't know, maybe because of my environment at the time, I just didn't know that's what I wanted to do. But if, when given enough opportunities or encouragement, I just basically one day, not one day, but one summer, I realized, wow, this is what I want to do, and I don't really want to do anything else. And then I realized it was my instrument. This is my way for me to continue making music. So I felt, that's why I hung on from then on, because if I didn't conduct anymore, I wouldn't be able to make music, So I've always prioritized that above anything, and I've always just done anything I could to conduct. So it's worked out, and I've had great opportunities, and the learning continues. It's never boring. It's always an ongoing thing. So I don't ever feel like I've arrived at a certain point, but it's fun to see the dots on the journey, and say, oh, there was this, and that prepared me for this. I didn't know, or I hated this, but they actually helped me get this next thing, or you know what I mean? Things like that. There are always things like that in, I think, all of our lives. So it's been a fun journey. So.
Wow. I'm thinking about Tanya last night, talking about Arthur Mitchell's seen something in her with composing. And
Right.
I'm thinking about you with that mentor that saw conducting in you, and that high school teacher, that how important it is for us to be aware and to encourage people, because
Yeah.
I know we weren't necessarily going to get into it, but being a female conductor, that was a lot for somebody to say you should pursue conducting at that time.
That's true. I mean, I feel very lucky. I grew up in the 90s, and I feel like that's when people stopped saying, oh, girls don't do that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
So I was never talked to about being a female conductor, like in high school or college. That was never, or even grad school, really. It was just not a topic.
Right.
But to hear, people like Maren Alsop, she just came out a documentary about her upbringing, and to hear her say things like, "Oh, honey, girls don't do that," and she's, maybe 20 years older, and she was already successful when I was coming up, so I've always looked up to her and Joanne Flack, whom we just talked about, and other female conductors. But for me, I've always taken it for granted that as long as I was okay with me doing it, that nobody else had a problem with it. But to have other people that are not you or your family that have vested interest in your success or failure professionally, just to have those other people say, "Oh, no, don't do that. The world won't," that is crushing, I'm sure. And I'm just so lucky I was that generation where I just didn't have to deal with that. And now, everybody wants to see more women conduct. So we're very fortunate in that, and I think people that are younger than me now, the 20s and 30s, I mean, there are so many people coming up and trying conducting and learning and having positions, early career positions with various orchestras in this country and beyond. So it's a very exciting time. I really believe that the playing field is gonna be leveled. It's just a matter of time, because, as you know, this industry moves at a glacial speed.
Glacial.
We plan everything way in advance, because everything is just so high stakes, and every concert has to be a home run, and every year has to be. You know what I mean? There's a lot of pressure, and so there's very small margin for error. And I think when you have that kind of a high pressure industry, you're afraid to take risks, with new people, new talent, new kinds of this and that. Right. And I think, but right now, I mean, as you said about amplifying voices, it's very, very, it's concluded.
Is it concluded? Sorry.
That's okay.
You're still rolling.
Oh, okay, great.
Well, I will
right.
keep talking.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm like,
sorry about that. It said the event has concluded.
Right, so the screen that we're seeing says that we're over, and so that we've been canceled, I believe. But so I'm glad that we're still rolling. Thank you. So sorry.
No, that's okay. So I mean, I'll wrap it up. I'll just say that it's an exciting time, because people are looking to shake things up a little bit, and they're looking for the differences instead of staying away from differences.
It's true. Well, in COVID, I'll have to say, COVID helped us learn how to pivot really fast, because we had to.
That's
we
right.
didn't have a choice.
That's right. And we couldn't perform the War Horses, because
Right.
we couldn't cram 70 people on stage. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that, because often with composers, they write for smaller ensembles because that's who is at college, and so all of a sudden with COVID, when all we could put was small groups on stage, we were getting to listen to some different voices.
That's right.
Yeah, so I think it helped with that glacial. You're right, and we are looking for different voices now. Yeah, which is nice.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, you guys are doing it, by commissioning and bringing different composers and residents here. And I mean, you're part of moving the glacier forward. So yeah.
Exactly. Well, okay, so as you in conducting, who are some of your role models with conducting?
Well, I have many role models for different things, and of course my high school and college mentors and teachers were huge. I still think back to how they conducted themselves, not necessarily baton technique, but the way they taught us, or the way they talked to us, or I think that kind of seeps into your brain when you're so malleable, But And many of you know my husband, as he gets off as a conductor, so he's had a major impact on me. I mean, we feel like we kind of grew up together, and even though we always worked in different states and different, totally different kinds of orchestras at any given time. I mean, we definitely exchange a lot of ideas, and he's had a big influence on me, obviously. But beyond the personal level, I have many role models that I admire. I would say right now the most famous conductor, household name conductor that has been a big role model the last couple of years is Esa-Pekka Salonen, who is now the music director of the San Francisco Symphony, but formerly he was with the Philharmonic Orchestra, and he was also the conductor of the LA Phil for 17 years. So he still comes back to LA, once or twice a year to guest conduct, and they welcome him back warmly. And at LA Phil, sometimes they have they're so busy, they have so many concerts that their staff conductors, it's not enough, and they just have too many concerts going on, so they always have to bring in cover conductors or assistant conductors from other places. So I did that like 4 times maybe when I was with the Minnesota Orchestra. I would fly into LA and kind of be like just a substitute assistant conductor for that week, and I happened to have some weeks with Esa-Pekka Salonen, and I think it didn't hurt that the first week I assisted him and was The Rite of Spring by Stravinsky, which is his signature piece. So I was like, okay, that's pretty awesome. But what I really liked was the way he is very himself, and it's not really about him. I think it helps that he started being a conductor accidentally. He was a composer first, and he wanted to conduct just so he can conduct his own music when he was young. But his conducting career just took off, so then he just became too famous for that to give it up. But I just liked his demeanor toward people and toward conducting. He doesn't take himself too seriously as a conductor. He knows that he's not a very important person in the overall equation. I mean, the composer is obviously our god. Whoever wrote the piece we're conducting right now is our god at the time. So we have to subscribe to that person's religion and just do whatever that person says, So we are their servants, and we are also, like, in a way, the orchestra's servants, because we're helping them perform these pieces, whether the composer is living or dead. So he's very, I think, I've never talked to him about this, but just hearing him talk or interface with people or rehearse, it's kind of obvious that it's not really about him. And he's like an observant. He's like, okay, well, in a weird way, he's detached. His ego is detached from the act of conducting, but it's about the piece and about the orchestra. He can be very paternal, toward the orchestra and their success, which we all need to be, or maternal. But so I just like his basic approach. And then, although we wouldn't have time to have these philosophical discussions or anything. The only time we ever talk is about okay, how is the balance in this section, or can you hear this? Can you hear the soloist, or can you hear the solo, the chorus, nuts and bolts, during the weeks. But, obviously with YouTube and internet, there are a lot of resources where if you're interested in somebody, you can check them out. So I YouTubed a lot of his talks and interviews, and there's one YouTube, I think it's still up there, from one YouTube where he talks about his philosophy on conducting. Oh. And I send it to all the people that come to me and say they want to ask me about being a conductor, like people who are kind of got the bug and they're not sure if this is for them. Yeah. And basically his conclusion at the end of that video is the most important thing is to be yourself, to be completely yourself as a conductor. And that is the opposite of what many of us think when we're starting out, because we look at these famous conductors on videos or on stage, and we think, oh, I have to be like them, and I have to be authoritative, I have to do this. And really, your job is to be so yourself that the music comes through, and all your work, like rehearsing and strategizing and thinking, that comes through without any barrier of your ego. So, you are not supposed to insert yourself, but you're going to impact the piece anyway because you're you. Because I can only conduct the way I conduct, and of course my personal taste and opinions form the performance, so of course it's going to be colored by me. But I think just being yourself kind of helps you be more transparent and not get in the way, or that's my interpretation of what he says. So I really admire that philosophy, And when you watch him conduct, he just looks like not, and he's intense, but he looks kind of easygoing. And also, I like the way he treats people. He's a very demanding boss. Like he is like with me, he was very like, you know, do this, do that, don't do this, and you know, he's very pointed about stuff, but he's very fair. And I feel like and then once he like kind of like recognizing talent, I feel like once he can see you for who you are, and he honors that. And you look at the list of collaborative partners that he's picked for the San Francisco Symphony, but again, this is one of those things where he doesn't take himself seriously enough. So he was like, when they hired him, he's like, well, I can't make it exciting on my own, so I'm going to hire cool, hip 8 artists that are soloists or composers or both,
right.
Of different genres to help me make the San Francisco Symphony, you know, get to the next level, next
right.
chapter.
Yeah.
So I mean, that tells you something about his
yeah.
philosophy, you know. And I mean, I think he's very good at like, he will not talk about, he's very nonverbal as far as I know, but like I think he just kind of observes, and he's like, oh, this person's good at this, or this person has what I need for this project, you know, per project. And like, I think he's very astute at discerning like what you are about, and like if there's something that is beneficial to him, he'll use it. You know, so in a weird way, I feel like he's like a secret agent, like secret talent scout, because he's not. That's why he doesn't care about promoting the next generation, because it benefits him. He sees it that way, and he feels. I don't think he feels any threat because he's so famous already.
Right.
Anyway, he's already reached his stature a long time ago, and for him, you know, it's just identifying the right talent for the right projects and certain situations, and I think he's very good at that. So like, whenever he appoints somebody or like he picks something, I feel like, and I'm not saying you know, I approve every decision or whatever. I'm just a form of watching from afar, like seeing things on the internet. But I do trust that he did it for a reason, and it was the best thing for the situation, you know. So I think that kind of decision-making ability and kind of observational ability is something and I mean, you do this too. I mean, I hear you talking about your musicians who wear multiple hats in the orchestra, and you kind of see somebody has some extra quality, you know. I mean, that's something that all leaders have to do when they manage like a large organization, and I think he does. I think he does that in a quiet way. So, yeah, I admire him a lot. There are a couple other conductors that are really like hot right now that I've never seen in person, but I would love to see. One is Kirill Petrenko. He's the chief conductor right now of the Berlin Philharmonic, because I do subscribe to the Digital Concert Hall, their online platform, and whenever he conducts, you can tell that the orchestra has absorbed what he told them something, because they played this phrase with some meaning. I was like, what did he tell them? Like, I mean, they're amazing, so every concert is like de facto amazing, but there's something up higher than that. Like, you can tell like they've been instructed to insert some meaning into this one phrase, or you know, that gesture. And so I'm just really curious to see his rehearsal someday. And I know he's all score based. He's all about the music and the composers. So I think that's one of the big reasons he was hired by them. And the other person is Jakub Hrusha. He is, I think he's Czech. And again, I've never seen him conduct live, only on videos. But I think he gets conduct the Cleveland Orchestra quite a bit. I really believe he's going to be the next superstar conductor. I mean, from what I've seen, and he seems. I think right now he's the chief conductor of the Bamberg Orchestra in Germany, and he does a lot of other things too. But he seems very smart, and I like his approach to music making from what I've observed. So, you know, maybe I'll run into these guys one of these days. Yeah.
Okay, we still have plenty of time, but I want to make sure that we talk about what we're going to hear this weekend. Like what are you going to tell the orchestra to make them amazing this weekend, or because that'll happen. And what can we expect this weekend?
Sure. So we have a really, actually, it turned out to be a really beautiful program of 3 contrasting pieces. Obviously, the Tanya Leon piece, Pasajes, that we talked about, And then in the middle, we have Mozart's Piano Concerto Number 21, featuring Martina Filiak. And then ending with Strauss' Tone Poem, Death and Transfiguration. And I think, well, obviously each one is so different, but I think, Strauss, there's a link to Mozart, even though they're years apart in music history, they're both kind of super craftsmen in their music, and there's transparency in their music, both very challenging for different reasons. And I talked about the craftsmanship of Tanya Leon's music, and I just think that we've received, these three pieces that are all very well constructed, very by masters, and nothing is kind of an accident or unintentional. So I find that, and then not every concert is like that. There are some concerts where the music is more like emotional, emotion based, and it's a wash of emotions, and extroverted, concerts. Every concert is different, but I think it just happened that this concert is comprised of three pieces that are very well constructed, and you can admire them for that, and you can enjoy the end results. And Mozart, he is probably next to Schubert, he is one of my most scary composers. I think he's the hardest composer to execute, but I'm very comforted by having Martina there. She wrote her own cadenzas for this one, I think, so I'm really excited to hear her cadenzas. And, this is a very popular of all piano concertos, and especially Mozart. So the audience is going to have a really lovely time hearing it. And the Strauss it's very exciting. It's about 26 minutes. It's a one continuous piece about the process of being on a deathbed at the end of your life and recalling all the past glories, the ups and downs of your life, and struggling, physically struggling with death, and mentally struggling with accepting the imminent death. But at the end, your body dies, but then your soul transfigures to reach this greatness that maybe during your life and you wanted to achieve, and so it's a very, very interesting piece, and it's super exciting. We rehearsed that a lot 2 days ago at our first rehearsal, that and the Tanya Leon piece, and the orchestra already sounds glorious in the first half of the piece, and we're going to get to the second half of the piece tonight, so just wait, and it's going to be really exciting. It features a big orchestra, it features everybody in the orchestra, everybody has big moments, so it's going to be super exciting. And Mozart is a lot more sparse. It's strings plus a couple of woodwinds and some brass players. It's a very much more transparent texture. It's going to be very refreshing, actually, to hear that in between two pieces that have bigger orchestration. So I think it's going to be really exciting. And as far as the process of, I have like a mapped out strategy of each rehearsal, but of course you have to kind of see how it goes and adjust as you go. Tonight, because Tanya is coming and we're starting with her piece, I want to give it a good amount of time, even though the piece is only 12 minutes, but like I said, it might take more time. So I do want to give it a good amount of time. And so if that takes a long time, I'm prepared to focus on a certain section of the Strauss, and we still have another opportunity to do detail work tomorrow night on that before the Mozart. So these are things that go through my mind this week. And then the orchestra is extremely, congratulations to all of you. You have a very highly motivated orchestra, not just talented, but there's good morale, high morale, and they're so willing to work hard and very passionate musicians. So I think you're very blessed to have this team, and I already had a good first rehearsal with them. I feel like, we're going to have a good rest of the week. So, yeah, I'm excited.
That's great. Okay, so I got a question. So yes, I think our orchestra is fantastic. So, but have you ever gone to when you're guest conducting, have you ever showed up and gone, oh boy, that was not what I was thinking it was going to be?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. And it's because every orchestra is great, but every orchestra has a different, depending on their what kind of orchestra it is, like whether it's budget size or regional or rehearsal schedule or the venue. I mean, every orchestra has a different, different ways that they make the sausage. You know, like and rehearsal schedule has a lot to do with it, and number of rehearsals. And so there's been a few instances. I can think of 2 examples where they rehearsed. They had a different rehearsal structure than like at the time what I was used to. And then it was the same amount of rehearsals, like 4 rehearsals for subscription concert time, but they're laid out differently through the week or a different time of the day, right? Depending on what kind of orchestra it is. So then there's been a couple times where I miscalculated. So I would make up I was like, oh yes, 2.5 hours here, and and I was like, here's a rehearsal order, boom. I'll send it to the orchestra, weeks in advance or sometimes months in advance. And then within that, I will rehearse and like be like, I already baked this on a Monday, or Tuesday. And so I just have, that part will be fine, or that first movement of this main piece we're doing will be fine, and then I'll like come back to it on a Friday and realize that so much time has passed that it's like we've all like, it was like starting over. And that has happened a couple times where I just miscalculated because I wasn't experienced enough in their rehearsal structure. So that happens. And so it's not so much like about the orchestra's technical abilities. The raw talent, of course, varies, but it's actually not that, I don't want to say different, but that's actually not, to me, the biggest factor. It's the rehearsal schedule and like what kind of lives everybody has. Like, is it something you do at 10 a.m. on a weekday? Like, this is your main job? Or is it something you do after you work all day at a 9-to-5 job? And then like my orchestra in Texas is the most extreme. We start rehearsal Saturday morning at 10. We have a double on Saturday. And then Sunday afternoon, we have a dress rehearsal, and we have a concert at 4.
Oh, so you just do it in a weekend?
We do it in a weekend, and these are all people who either play in other orchestras during the week or teach during the week. So, but they look forward to the weekend. You know what I mean? So it's a different vibe. And so we're the most extreme, I think, of all the orchestras I've conducted. And then, of course, when I was staff conductor in San Antonio or Minnesota, these are full-time year-round orchestras, so they would rehearse, start Tuesday or Wednesday morning at 10. And it would be very condensed, but it would be during the day. And like 10 a.m. to 4 at max, kind of thing. And with a lunch break in the middle. So it's just a different, everybody, we're all human, and we all have so much energy, in a day or in a week. And there's a different flow. So it's that kind of calculation that has gone awry a couple times. And I, at the director's, I was like, that I should have reviewed this, or I shouldn't have counted on that first rehearsal so much. It was important, but it doesn't mean we have it in us still, because there's been so much new information since then, because we did the concerto and the overture, you know what I mean? That's stuff that I introduced later in the day take over your brain. So then you forget about the symphony that you did at the beginning of the piece because it was supposedly the most important thing. That kind of thing. So I've had so this season has been like weirdly this season was like a conglomeration of a lot of different guest conducting, because partly like makeups from COVID cancellations. So it was just an unusual season for me personally, but I did experience that.
Okay. I bet. I was like, what if you showed up and they couldn't actually play? What would you do?
No, I've never had a situation. Okay. Or like if you have to, before you program the concert, you have to make sure you know enough about the situation to not program things that you can't handle in that time frame. How
do you do that?
Well, you have to do a lot of research. I mean, you have to with internet or like past programming, you can kind of tell, what works for them. And then you think it's about the region or what the audience in the region likes, and that has big influence. But actually, the other half of the calculation is what you can accomplish in your rehearsal time frame with the kinds of musicians you have. So it's a big math. Calculation equation, but the audience is just half the equation. What the orchestra can accomplish in that time frame is for me, it's the number one. But if the orchestra suggests a piece to me, like, David Renfro said, hey, the orchestra would be interested in doing Death and Transfiguration when we first started talking about it. So I knew, it's like, okay, so that's something they definitely can handle and they're curious about.
Right.
So I was like, game on, because it's one of my favorite pieces.
Okay.
So that's how this program started being constructed. So it is helpful if they have a suggestion, but if they invite you to come up with from something from scratch, then you better do research. I mean, you better not suggest anything that is out of the bounds.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, programming is so. There's so many layers to it. So
Yes.
interesting. Like, anyway.
Not to mention stuff on your end, right? That come into play even before you start like talking repertoire. Like, what can you do that week? What should you do?
Right. What's the audience? What makes sense for your community? I know one of the things that we looked at this year, and I think pre-COVID anyway, but it was like we want to feature Arkansas artists. So we've got Florence Price featured, or William Grant Still is featured next year. Like, or we've got the bluegrass. We've got that as well. So
cool.
That's one of our, what are the values of the organization? How does that come into play? Because I think about that with programming. That this is what we say. The programming reflects who we say we are.
Yes.
So much, and so what values are we presenting to the world? So
it's very challenging, but I feel like that's why every orchestra comes up with something different. Even though we all play some of the same war horses, the standard rep, but everybody comes up with a slightly different way of presenting it, or sandwiching between like different pieces, and I think that's very regional and orchestra specific. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Do we have any questions?
We do. You mentioned Strauss. Do you have particular other favorite composers, and what's a piece that you have not had a chance to conduct yet but you really want to?
Oh.
Okay. So the question from the Zoom land is, do you have any other favorite composers, and is there anything that you've wanted to conduct that you haven't gotten to conduct yet?
Oh yes. Well, I already have like a bucket list before I die. I want to conduct kind of thing if the opportunity presents itself.
Right.
And I don't know if I ever will, but it's good to have a goal, So one is St. Matthew Passion by Johann Sebastian Bach. It's a 3.5-hour piece with double orchestra and double chorus and multiple solos. So it kind of presents a challenge, on a practical level. The other piece is Missa Solemnis by Beethoven. Beethoven, I don't have a favorite composer, but if you force me to say, he's probably my friend. I feel like he's a friend, and he's all of our friends, But he's somebody I know more than many of the other composers, and also I feel like I like the personality of his music, speaks to me. So. And he will always be, a perpetual challenge and a friend to me and to many conductors. But Missa Solemnis is a choral orchestral work, again with soloists. It's of epic proportions, not so much in length, but in the technical challenges. It's a huge scope. So those two, and then Mahler 3, the Third Symphony, is always kind of my dream piece. And at the beginning of the pandemic, when everything got canceled, the only thing to do was kind of dream, now that I have all this free time, what should I study? And so I did crack open my Mahler 3 score. I didn't quite finish studying it or learning it, in earnest. But so those three are sort of my big bucket list items. At some point, if I'm ready, I think those are pieces like I feel like I have to be ready to do them. I have to have the maturity and the knowledge. Although some people have gone to do those earlier in their careers, I have no desire to do them anytime too soon. It would be a shame if you did those too early in your development as a conductor. So I can shelve those, but those are my bucket list items.
I heard that. Anything else?
Question more for me. What sort of advice would you give to a young music student who's interested in conducting?
So the question from the room is what advice would you give to a young music student or a young person wanting to go into conducting?
So obviously, if you want to go into it, you're already interested in it. I think you should. It's very difficult and it's narrow, and there are so many aspects of conducting that are mysterious. And sometimes they're mysterious to you because you're not ready for them, but then sometimes they're mysterious because they're just the way the world works. And they're things that are out of your control. And, there's literally nothing you can do about them, but just go with the flow. And so if you're okay with those uncertainties and you still want to be a conductor, then, I think it's great. I mean, I've had, you know, a hell of a journey pursuing it, and my life is all about that, and it's enriched by that. So I have no regrets. I just think that when the going gets tough, or when there's so many mysteries, unsolved mysteries, whether it's your fault or somebody else's fault, then you have to love it enough that you can get past them and just keep doing what you're doing and enjoy the opportunities that you do have, and like just don't dwell on things that don't happen, because so much is out of your control, and so many things in conducting are dependent on other people. And basically everything is dependent on other people because we don't make any sound. So all we can do is like hopefully program smartly and then rehearse well and conduct well and study, you know, enough. That's all we can control. So I think if you're okay with like a lot of uncertainty in the everyday working life and also the future of your career, then I say go for it, you know, enjoy the journey. And there's now with internet, I mean, there's so much out there that you can absorb without going to a fancy school or without living in Europe, or, you know, everything is at your fingertips. So I envy younger people coming up and becoming conductors. We didn't have YouTube when we were studying to be conductors. We had to order videotapes, DVDs, or, you know, things like that, and go to the library and, you know, things like that. So you don't have to do any of that anymore. So you all are lucky. But I think it's if you like people and if you like challenges, and if you're okay not having control over a lot of things, then I think it's for you. So.
Interesting. Any other questions?
Another one from Zoom. Have you had a chance to conduct in Japan?
Have you had a chance to conduct in Japan, Akiko?
I have not. You know, I haven't rehearsed in Japanese since I was like 14. So like, I don't even know if I know how to say like, let's start or measure 10. Or I can still speak Japanese, but I don't even know if I know like the protocol like of Japanese musicians anymore. But I have not had the opportunity. When I do go home to Japan, I usually just sit on my parents' couch for 3 weeks and do nothing. So it's a very family-oriented thing right now. But, you know, maybe someday there will be an opportunity, and that'll be lovely. So, yeah.
Thank you. So we have just a few more minutes. And is there anything else about this weekend's concert that you'd like to say?
I would just say you all are in for a treat, and it's going to be a good concert. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And at the concert this time, we always do a pre-concert talk with the conductor before an hour before each concert, and it takes place on the upper level of Robinson. I'm excited this time because it'll include Akiko and Martina and Tanya. So all three of them will be here for our pre-concert talk. We were having a conversation this week with our marketing consultant, who's somewhere, Minnesota, I think. But anyway, she was looking at the three of you, and she's like, "Gosh, this is the concert people will need to come to." She's like, "This is the future face of classical music right here with what you have going on this weekend." So, yeah,
I'm glad.
I know. I was so excited because I'm like, I agree, because it's such an international.
That's true. Yeah,
Mhm.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful program.
Yeah, and you got three very stubborn ladies coming at you. So.
Right. Well, all three incredible artists. All three incredible artists, and I'm so excited about this weekend and the program. One of the things that I miss so much, I didn't know how much I missed it until I've been coming back to the concerts. I did not know how much I missed hearing all the musicians and the different sounds of the orchestra wash over me and be in that space. And then we recently had a concert and the audience was just going wild with the orchestra, and I was like, I've missed this so much.
Yes.
And this program is so fun. You got Tanya Leon's kind of Cuban South American, and then the Mozart, which is eminently classical and beautiful, and then the Death and Transfiguration with Strauss. So it's a beautiful program.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So glad you're here to conduct it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Yeah, and thank you all so much for joining us on Zoom and in person. And we look forward to seeing you at the concert this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.